Interest rates have finally hit pre-2022 rates. Isn't that great? That's great news, right? But insurance has taken its place in terms of a cost. I just feel like as a home buyer, sometimes it just seems like they just sit around in a conference room trying to figure out how to charge a home buyer more. But that's not all this video is about. This is your market update for September 2025. We're going to talk about Santa Cruz, prices here, and some insurance policy things that you need to understand to make sure that you are not going to be able to get an insurance policy for that home you just fell in love with, and or you're not going to have that policy canceled later because of some conditions that you were okay with, but the insurance company is not. So first, interest rates. Interest rates are 6.13% today. Awesome, right? The Fed has lowered the rate 0.25%. Now, we all know, and I express it, and hopefully everybody knows, that's not your mortgage interest rate. That's the federal loan lending rate. They're two totally different things. But the thing is, most consumers, they act accordingly. When they see that rate drop, then they expect their mortgage rates to go down. Now, they're not always going down. Right now, they are. So we do have an influx of buyers. Mortgage applications are way, way up, more over year for right now than in past years. So we know there's more activity from buyers. But buyers are still getting sticker shock. Is that from prices rising? Yes, especially in very, very desirable areas like the west side of Santa Cruz. Hello, there are still homes out here that are getting over ask and having multiple offers. Now, an agent just did tell me that she had a condo and it got 4 offers, but they all came in at list price. So not necessarily over. So again, you have you have a lot of people competing for the same property. Now, it's got to go a little bit over because you got to figure out which one is really going to come up and actually close that sale. So there is activity. Buyers are active. I am getting a lot more calls from buyers. I feel like I'm busier with buyers. So that will cause prices to rise. Now, when they say prices rise, you have to, if you were to ask me, Michelle, did they really rise? Well, I'd have to go back and look at an MLS listing or a bunch of them to see, would it have sold for lower? See, because what's happening is when you look at listings, you see, oh, well, it was listed at 145 and it sold for 145. But prices rising would be that 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage next door last year sold for 1.35. See what I mean? So that's how they're getting prices are rising, not necessarily over asking the market price. There's not a lot of that. It's just that home that would have sold for lower at a different time, sold for higher. It actually, and despite the interest rates, I mean, they really just went down in the last 30 days. They've just been on a steady decline. But then again, some of the houses are still sitting. One house in particular that I saw, so I did a survey out of 13 properties on the west side of Santa Cruz. 8 of them sold for less than their list price. Now, one of them was interesting. It sold for its list price, but it was on the market for a year and it was listed for a lot higher. It was listed for like 2.3 and then it sold for 1.8. So you could say it sold for less, but when you look at it, maybe as a consumer on a quick website, you go, oh, well, that's sold for list. Everything's going for list. No, you have to really drill down, or you have to call an expert that can really drill down on those numbers to give you an idea of what a neighborhood's doing. For instance, I did a quick one for somebody who was looking in Ben Lomond. I discovered that a lot of Ben Lomond is not selling for less. And a lot of those homes were in areas that were not the most desirable. Ben Lomond has a lot of really, really cool pockets and some other pockets, like any area, just not so great. They were still holding strong on pricing. But as we're going to talk about insurance, they do have insurance issues up there. So when you are looking at that price, you've got to factor in how much your insurance is going to cost up there. And or what people are afraid of is that I'm going to get the insurance policy today, right? But they might take it back from me later if they decide they really can't handle being insuring in the San Lorenzo Valley. So just keep that in mind. So July 2025 was interesting. There was 200 price reductions. Can you believe that? Highest amount of listings at 658 that we've had for years. I know we've had other years where we've had a lot of listings, but it goes back to 2022. It was the highest amount of listings since 2022 or whatever it was before that, because it only goes that far. It was 658 in July of 2025. And then it had the highest amount of price reductions, 200 price reductions, 200. So if you think about that 658 listings, you might get the idea that you see that and you go, oh, okay, well, houses are selling for less. Be careful with that, because if you like that house and you think it's going to go fast and you really want that house, you need to be prepared to pay at least list for it. Come in at list. But I always encourage people to come in a little more if that house is something that you really, really, really want. We're not going to talk about conditions of home, because I'm always carpet on those. Now, for insurance, I went to a meeting that insurance companies now have really spelled out the things that they are looking for. Now, I knew since the beginning of the year that they look at roofs. They look at the age of the roof. One of the ways to get around that, if you've listened to my videos, you know that you get a roof inspection. It'll give you an estimate of the age, an estimate of how much longer it has, because some roofs age differently than others. It depends on the thickness of the comp. It depends on when it was put in, because some roofs, actually newer roofs, they just last so much longer. So somebody could go, oh, it's a 20-year roof and it was put on 15 years ago because it was the top of the line at that time. So a roof expert is the one that's actually going to really tell you a lot about that roof. Then you take that roof inspection or estimate of how much longer it has and what it needs to do to get it up to snuff, and you give that to the insurance company. The other thing is knob and tube. A lot of houses on the west side of Santa Cruz, and I can tell you, Seabright, probably all the way to, not much in Aptos, because so much of Aptos was built much later, is knob and tube. The thing is, like my house, I have knob and tube in my attic, but it's not hooked up to anything. It's there, but it's not connected. Now, they could say, do you have knob and tube wiring? And I would say, tell the truth, yes, but is it powering my house? No. A home inspection can help you get to the bottom of that. Don't be afraid of knob and tube. What you need to be afraid of is when knob and tube meets Romex, and they should not be connected. There's ways to do it to make sure it's done properly, but that's usually where you have a problem. Knob and tube on its own is really not a problem, but new homes have insulation, and then they have other factors that can make knob and tube dangerous. Foliage touching the house. So I just sold a house July, and there was a tree touching the house and nobody said a word. We had everything trimmed off, and then the gardener said, hey, we should trim this branch off. And I said, well, I don't know what that's going to take. And he goes, well, tell you what, if the buyer wants it done, we'll put it on the books and get it done. Buyers never said anything. But I can tell you that the insurance company may come back later and tell them, no, that's not insurmountable. They just have somebody come out and trim the tree. But those are the things that they're looking for. And they can give you the policy. You'll get your loan. You'll be just, pedaling away or doing what you're doing. And they can come back and still want these items fixed. So don't think that just because you skated through that they may not come back. Insurance companies are doing that. That's also the way they can purge people off the rolls if they are trying to do that, which they do. Insurance discussions are for another video. So interest rates are good, really good. We're seeing prices higher, really, than what they would have been last year for the same home. So lower interest rates may not be that perfect storm for you, but it's a better environment. Here's the other thing I've noticed lately. Lenders seem more amenable. They seem to want the business. I think they've had a good 1.5 year run of almost no business, and they seem to be saying yes a little bit more. So there's your good news. Insurance, just make sure that if you're looking into older houses, Santa Cruz has a lot of older houses, and we have a lot of interesting things that go on in those houses. So it's best to get those inspections, have them looked at. If you can, have a contractor go look at them, or, later on have them looked at, and make sure that you keep in mind insurance companies still could come back, be ready. And I think that's it. That's what I have for you this I mean, I could go on with all these crazy statistics, but really the market is actually kind of normal, a little more healthy than it's been. So, yeah. If you need anything, the Calendly link below, text me. I'm happy to help you or set up a consultation appointment and give you a little bit of that real estate advice that I'm giving out all the time. Okay, thanks.